So what we're here doing today is we're going to come through and mark up our timber to remove that material there. The X's indicate that that material is to be removed so that we can go through and know where we're going to be planing down to. So let's get our new piece of timber and let's start. So we've got our piece of timber here. The very first thing you want to go through and do is really look at your timber and study the grain, study the patterns on it, study if there's any bumps or dings in your piece, because quite often there are. I'm very lucky that on this piece there's not. If there are dings, we want to use that as the piece to remove. So you probably can't see, but there's a ding right here, and you want to be able to remove that from it, because you don't want that on your project, on your furniture. So I'm very blessed that this is a very nice piece of material here, the radiata pine we're using today. And we're going to come through, and very first step we're going to do is choose the top from the bottom. Now for me, it doesn't really worry me too much, so just for argument's sake, I'm going to use this piece here as the top. For me, it does not worry me at all. I'm then going to use my 300mm metal rule. I'm going to come back and I'm going to mark up 65mm. So once you've chosen your piece and checked it for any dents, come back and mark it up at 65mm. Now, there's always a rule when fabricating things: measure twice, cut once. So after we've drawn everything up, we go back through and we double check those measurements. So we're coming through, we've marked where we want it to go. We then get our square, trusty square. Now when we use a square, very important, use your thumb at the back, use your rude finger to be holding it against the piece, and use your index finger to push that square down so it can't fall backwards. If you do those three things, you should get a straight line every time. Otherwise, it's very easy for it to be angled ever so slightly. Obviously, I'm exaggerating it there. We've marked back 65mm. We're coming across. I'm going to come through, I'm going to measure this the whole way around. Now what you're going to see me do is taking a look at where that line is. I mark a top section there so I can easily carry that across. Now sometimes the movements here are going to be a little bit awkward, and that's just because I'm trying to keep everything in screen and in focus for you guys. Mark that up, mark that through. Now as you can see, my line carries across the whole way around. That's very important. If it doesn't line up and it's out by more than, say, 1 mil, there's something wrong, and so please come and see me. Potentially you're just holding the square inappropriately or incorrectly, and that's going to throw you off. Your timber should all be correct stock and size and ripped to the correct measurements and dimensions, but sometimes there's even issues there. From that 65mm mark step, the next thing we're going to do is, once again, we're going to use this lovely 300mm ruler, and we're going to mark up 25mm back. Now, or 25mm from one of the edges. Now, once again, I don't like this feature here. I think that's kind of ugly. Having a little bit of it would be nice, but the whole lot is too much for me. So I'm now going to mark this as my reference edge. And to do that, you just do a little arrow to that corner there, or for you guys, an arrow like that, and it shows it's a reference edge, saying that this is where I'm going to be marking out from. Then I'm going to use my metal rule. Now you could come back and measure 25, but the issue is that it wants to move a little bit. And you've always got to mark to the bottom. You can't be marking like up here 25, because it's going to throw the measurement off. So you need to mark right at the bottom edge here. To do that, I'm going to use something called back ruling or back stepping. Now to do that, I'm coming to the 100mm mark. I'm setting my 100mm mark up against my reference edge, which is that one just there. I'm going to measure back 25mm. So I'm going to go from 100 to 125mm. Remember, it's very important to be accurate here, because if one's off, you'll be able to see it. There you go, I've got my mark here. The next job I need to do is to connect it. So using that 600mm ruler again, or metal rule, and come through and do that. Now one of the issues I'm having right here is that I'm actually going to cover up my tape with my name on it, and I don't want that. So I'm going to grab my tape, and this is the great thing about the tape. I'm going to move it up to somewhere where it's not going to go anywhere. Stick it down there. And of course, if your tape starts to peel off or loses its stick because you're having to move it a few times, make another label. It's not a big deal. come through, mark your 2 pieces up like so, ensuring you're happy where that is. I like to have it going this way, so I'm actually going to spin my piece so you get a bit of view. So mark there, and we're going to come through and draw that mark in, that line in. Now once again, it's a bit easier when you're using a pencil because your line isn't so fat. So you're getting a more accurate cut. From there, instantly come through and draw some X's on the side that is the smallest, so the side that you haven't measured. So as you can see, we're coming down, you've then got the base of your foot here, and it comes back up. That here is scrap, this is what you're keeping. Then I want you to flip it up, do the same there, and we're going to come through and we need to continue this line across. So to do that, we're going to use our square. Instead of trying to hold it like this, it's got a lot of wobble, push it through, because generally we want the most of this on your project as possible. And that's why we've got 2 edges, the top edge and then also the bottom edge. Now for that, I'm going to come through and use a little handy trick of just marking where that needs to go on the edge. Just trace that around just a smidge, come through using that there, like so, holding that nice and straight and steady, and continue that line across. It can be difficult. If you need a friend or someone to assist you, do not hesitate to ask someone. From there, using your pencil, do an X and an X, or an X to highlight that this is once again scrap. We now just have to finish off the last side. So continuing this line around, just a little mark with your pencil, making sure that's lining up. Get your 600mm rule. Once again, I'll spin it so you get a better viewpoint. Marking from there to there. Actually, I think I spelled it the wrong way. Oh well. Come through and you're just gonna draw that off. Finally, double check that's correct. And it is not. So I actually screwed that one up. And so this time, you would erase it. But for me, I'm just gonna go like this, because I'm gonna know that I'll sand that off later. And I needed to go down to this edge. And this is why we double check. Every year I have students come through and be like, oh sir, I did it the wrong way on one side. Yeah. So this time we double check everything. So coming through, checking that, drawing that down. We then need to come through and draw the X's on this side, making sure that there's no anything extra there. And this is what your piece should look like without this mark here. Remember, always double check those measurements. So very first measurement you're going to do is make sure that that is 65mm. That is, make sure that from this edge here, your surface edge or your face edge to the line there is 25, and that is. And then as long as all the other pieces look like they match up, which they do, you should be good to go. I look forward to catching you in the next episode.